I think something strange happens as we get older. We spend our 20s trying to seem certain, trying to have it figured out, trying to prove something to people who, honestly, weren't paying that much attention. And then somewhere along the way, without deciding to, we stop needing to prove it. Not because we gave up, because we finally understood something that no one could have explained to us back then. So here's what I want to ask you. What has getting older taught you that being young simply couldn't? I think when we're young, we imagine wisdom as something you arrive at, a finish line, a moment where you finally know. But it doesn't really work that way. It comes in small, unglamorous pieces. You learn that most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you feared. You learn that the thing you were so afraid of at 25 turned out to be survivable. You learn that some problems don't get solved, they just get outgrown. Think about something that used to terrify you. A decision, a conversation, a fear of being seen a certain way that barely registers anymore. Think about a version of yourself, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, who would have found today's ordinary calm almost unimaginable. Maybe it's watching someone younger struggle with something you used to struggle with, and finally understanding people in your own life a little better than you did back then. Maybe it's realizing the job or the achievement that once felt like your whole identity is actually just one part of a much bigger life. You learn something about friendship, too. That the friends worth keeping aren't the ones who never disappoint you. They're the ones you've disappointed and forgiven, and been disappointed by, and forgiven again, enough times to know the friendship can hold it. I'm not saying everything gets easier. Some things get harder. But something does shift. And most of us don't notice it happening, only that it happened. There's a particular kind of knowledge that only comes from repetition, from having lived through the same kind of heartbreak, the same kind of disappointment, more than once. When you're young, everything feels like the first time, because usually it is. The first heartbreak feels like the world ending, because you have nothing to compare it to. No evidence that you survive things like this. But by the third or the fifth, something changes. Not that it hurts less, but you know in your body that you come out the other side. You've done it before. That's not something anyone can teach a 20-year-old. You can tell them, "This too shall pass," and they'll nod and not believe it, because they haven't lived it yet. Wisdom, I think, is mostly just evidence. Evidence your body and your mind have collected, one hard thing at a time, that you are more durable than you knew. And there's something else, something quieter. The older we get, the more we understand how little control we actually had over most of it. The plans that fell apart and turned out fine. The plans that worked and turned out to be the wrong ones. Young people build their whole identity around being right about the future. Older people, if they're paying attention, learn to hold that future a little more loosely. You learn something about work, too. That the project that felt like the most important thing in the world at 28 is barely a memory now. And the project you're doing today, the one that feels so urgent, some of it will matter, and some of it won't. And you won't fully know which until much later. You see it in small ways, in how you handle a canceled plan, in how you handle news that used to catch you completely off guard, in how a disagreement with someone you love doesn't have to mean the relationship is over anymore. You've had enough disagreements by now to know most of them pass. There's also this. You start to recognize your own reactions before they finish happening. The flash of anger, the urge to defend yourself, the old need to be right in an argument that doesn't actually matter. You still feel all of it, but there's a half-second of space now that wasn't there at 25. A half-second where you can choose something different. Here's what I keep coming back to. We treat getting older like a loss. Fewer years ahead than behind. A body that doesn't do what it used to. And there is loss in it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But we rarely talk about what's actually been gained, because it doesn't photograph well. It's not a milestone you can put on a wall. It's the ability to sit in an uncomfortable conversation without needing to fix it immediately. It's caring less what people think, and somehow caring more specifically, about the people who actually matter. It's knowing your own patterns well enough to interrupt them before they cause the damage they used to. It's noticing you're about to say the same defensive thing you always say, and, for once, not saying it. It's recognizing an old story you tell about yourself and quietly deciding it isn't true anymore. Your body keeps a different kind of record too. It remembers every late night you survived, every hard season you got through still standing. That's not decline. That's testimony. Let that sit for a moment. None of that shows up on a resume. None of it makes for a good highlight reel. But if you actually compare who you are now to who you were then, not the surface, the actual internal machinery, I think you'd find you're operating with a kind of quiet competence your younger self didn't have and couldn't have faked. The question is whether you give yourself credit for it, or whether you're so busy mourning what the years took that you miss what they left behind. Here's what feels hopeful to me. You don't have to have it all figured out to notice this. You don't need to be at the end of anything. You just have to look, honestly, at one thing that used to be hard for you and isn't anymore. One fear that's quieter now. One version of a conversation you can have today that you couldn't have had 10 years ago. That's the evidence. That's what the years bought you. Not the years you spent achieving things. The years you spent simply continuing. Showing up for the ordinary, difficult, repetitive work of being a person, again and again, until some of it finally became easier. It's already paid for. You just have to notice it's yours. You don't have to perform growth for anyone. You don't have to announce that you've changed. The evidence is already there, in how you're living, whether or not anyone else has noticed it yet. I don't know how old you are, or what these years have specifically cost you. But I think if you're honest, there's something you know now that you didn't used to. Something that took time and difficulty and repetition to actually learn, not just hear about. Maybe you know now that most fears don't come true. Maybe you know that the people who really love you were never keeping score the way you feared. Maybe you know that you can survive things you once thought would end you, because you already have, more than once. Maybe the question isn't what you've lost by getting older. Maybe the question is simpler than that. What do you know now that you wish you could go back and tell someone who's still afraid of the thing you're no longer afraid of? You don't have to have all the answers to notice that you have some. Maybe that's enough for tonight. And maybe what the years have taught you is the most valuable thing you're not using yet.